there's no shortage of prototypes. Like they can get a couple engineers together, build a prototype very easily that works, say 90% of the time. But you see, 90% of the time is not good enough to push it in production.
Matt, Brad, a lot of companies can get an agent working in a small test, but scaling that agent across the business, that's a whole different story. What's the challenge?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of enterprise customers, and what I hear them say is that there's no shortage of prototypes. Like they can get a couple engineers together, build a prototype very easily that works, say 90% of the time. But you see, 90% of the time is not good enough to push it in production. Like real enterprise workloads requires 99.9%. And that's just harder to do with LLMs because, in a prototype, you just oh, it worked one time. It's great. But how do you make it work really reliably? And then, once you really get to scale, then you start talking about like there's real costs involved in this. I mean, I know running a big part of the Anthropic's business, like there's a non-trivial cost to many of our customers. And so understanding how to manage those costs and really get the best intelligence for your dollar out is another big aspect of it.
So let's assume that you managed to get the agent working,
Yeah.
and then it's scaled. Getting it to work with other agents, Matt, becomes a little bit complicated. But once you do that, if you can successfully do that, how does that change the workflow?
I think it's important to look at what's the outcome you're trying to get. I think there's a lot of focus on agents, and there's a lot of talk about, am I going to have agents on my team or agents on my org chart or agentic teammates? I actually think that's not the right way to think about it.
Okay.
Agents are tools. Agents allow you to automate processes that you couldn't automate before because they understand language and they have logic and reasoning. But from a business standpoint, what we need to be looking at is what's the end-to-end process that we're trying to change? And how do we make that process more efficient, more productive, whatever our objective is. So I would start with mapping out that process. What are all the steps that the humans are taking? Which of those steps are toil that I can automate with an agent? And then stringing together what are those, 1, 2, 5, whatever number of agents that are going to take those parts of the tasks to get that outcome.
And finally, when you look at how companies are deploying agentic AI across their organizations, how do you see that changing the way we work?
I'm really excited to have agents democratize access to skills and information. Not everyone can have access to a data analyst or a lawyer or a professional marketing person. But if we have agents that can make each line employee have access to all these variety of disciplines and be able to have like a great conversation about like what the right way to position this product is, for example, me as a product manager, I don't have to bug my data analyst every day, peppering with hundreds of questions. I can just iterate with agent and get like the insights that I need to be able to do my job. And I think about how much more effective I am at that, how much more effective our data analyst team is at like doing their core job, not handling my random, product questions. Like, I think it's a win-win if we just multiply that kind of experience across all the employees at a company. They have full access to all of the enterprise information.
Man.
So I think most jobs, 80% of the job is toil. And if we can use agents, empower everybody in the organization to use agents to delegate that toil, imagine what we can do with that time. And I'm not talking about reducing the number of people. I'm talking about having those people use the capabilities that they can get out of these agents to do even more. I think this has the potential to really amplify the impact of every single employee in the organization and make their job more fulfilling and create a ton more value for the company.
Reducing toil and amplifying impact. I love it.
Love it.
Thank you.